and welcome. So in today's lesson, we're going to be having a look at what is the impact of a legal monopoly when there is an oligopoly. So we know that there is a legal monopoly and there is a theoretical monopoly, and we've kind of touched a little bit upon the idea of a legal monopoly within an oligopoly because it's the most common actual form of kind of legal monopoly. And today we're just going to go into a bit more depth about what that means and the impact that that has. So, like I said, we've had a look at this a little bit before, but we're actually just going to add a bit more depth, add a bit of a more understanding, so that you know that you can go all the way up to kind of like a level 4 if you're asked about this in a 25 mark question. So, one of the first things that we need to think about is what is a legal monopoly within an oligopoly. So we know that that would mean that we've got one firm that is much larger than the other firms in the market. Now, we can see that kind of in some example markets. So for instance, if you look at coffee shops in the UK, Costa has a much larger market share than the second kind of largest in the market, Starbucks, and it is very much an oligopoly kind of market structure as well. When we think about, we've got like Caffè Nero, Pret, Starbucks, Costa, it really is like an oligopoly. It definitely has the characteristics of an oligopoly, but there's a legal monopoly within it, right? So there's a legal monopoly there, and that is Costa in the UK. So we've got at least 25% market share. I think that Costa has nearly over 30% of the market share compared to Starbucks, which is second, which I think has only 14 to 16%. But they still act interdependently. So Costa still acts interdependently as a firm, so it still makes its decisions based on the other firms within the market. So it might have a small amount of price setting power, it might have a small amount of kind of power within the market, but it definitely acts interdependently. It makes its pricing decisions, it makes its kind of cost decisions, it makes everything, its non-price competition decisions around what the other people in the market are doing, which would definitely make it an oligopoly market structure. So it also has the other characteristics of an oligopoly. There's lots of non-price competition, you've got a lot of loyalty cards, like a lot of kind of like advertising. There's a lot of kind of, if you think about those, like they try and differentiate their products as much as they can. So there's a lot of non-price competition as well. So it's definitely an oligopoly with a legal monopoly in it. So what I would like you to do is pause the video here and think about what impacts that might have. Logically try and break it down, and then we'll have a look at the diagrams. So one of the biggest things is that the legal monopoly is probably going to have, we can make a good assumption that that legal monopoly is going to have lower costs than the other firms in the market. Right, well, why? One of the reasons why is because purely they just have economies of scale, much larger economies of scale than the other competitors in the market. So let's think about Costa. So Costa definitely has much larger economies of scale than others in the market within the UK. Now, I'm not talking about global economies of scale like Starbucks, I'm just talking about it kind of secularly in the UK. So Costa has to supply all of these firms, all of these shops within the UK. So what they may well do is they might go to a cup manufacturer or a cup lid manufacturer or any of those kind of like a table manufacturer or whatever, and ask them to give them a lower price because they have to fill all of these orders for every single shop that they have in the UK. And the firm that's producing that is more likely to give them that lower price because they're producing so much, takes away some of the risk for a firm that's producing. And they might be able to demand a much lower price because they're fulfilling more orders than, say, any of the other firms in the oligopoly, so Pret or Caffè Nero. Also, you may well find that it has just like vertical collusion, or not even collusion, maybe just tacit collusion, or maybe just any form of kind of negotiation vertically, more so than any of the other firms in the market. Now, one of the reasons why, again, might just be because they're able to kind of offer a much larger market share, kind of like advertising wise. So for instance, if you've got a firm that's selling their coffee beans, and you can go to Costa or Starbucks or anywhere and buy a packet of coffee beans now, well, you're more likely to be able to get a deal, you're more likely to want to be able to give a deal with Costa because they have so much more outlets. Also their average cost is going to be lower because their marginal cost is lower, but also their fixed cost might be lower as well. So for instance, if you think about rent, then Costa might get a lower rent than any other coffee shop because of the power of Costa. So if you think about a high street, or if you think about a supermarket, or if you think about, you know, like a kind of shopping centre, when shopping centres or high streets or whatever are selling their shops, they may well give a firm like Costa a lower price for rent for a certain time or indefinitely than they do other shops, because they know that people will visit Costa and they will visit the other shops on the street or in the shopping centre. Because Costa has you know, if you think about the market at the moment in the UK, the high street has very much changed. It used to be the Marks and Spencers that would get these kind of fixed cost deals, but now it's very much coffee shops, probably Costa more than anywhere else, because they know that if somewhere they have a Costa on the high street, then people will go visit the high street, because that kind of socialising on the high street is very much kind of a much higher multiplier than any of the other kind of standalone brick and mortar shops that are there. So their average cost and their marginal cost may well be lower. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that their profit maximising position, their price, is going to be lower than others in the market who do not have the same economies of scale or kind of power to vertically collude, or, you know, any of those things that lower their average cost and their marginal cost. So that means that the profit maximising price might be lower than some of their other competitors in the market. And because they're the largest, because they're the biggest firm, we know that one of the benefits of being the legal monopoly, the largest firm within a oligopoly, is that you get to set that kink demand price. So you get to set that price at your profit maximising price. So that might mean that the profit maximising price is lower than it would have been kind of naturally fall to under normal market conditions in an oligopoly, and that's going to negatively affect the other firms in the market. So the kink price might be lower than the other firms, and then their other firms may make less supernormal profits than the legal monopoly is going to make, because they're not working at their profit maximising price, they're working at a price that they have to take. They've almost become kind of price takers, or more likely price followers in the market, right? And we're going to have a look at what that means diagrammatically right now. If you want to have a go at doing this on your own, there's 3 diagrams. And have a go at doing this on your own. Think about what it might mean, think about the market as a whole, and then have a go at drawing these diagrams, pause, and then see what we're actually going to do. So, for the sake of continuity, what I've done here is I've already done the AR and MR. I'm going to presume that because it's an oligopoly, because there are all the other characteristics of an oligopoly, that they are actually have the same, or at least very, very similar AR and MRs. There's lots of consumer switching, but even though, because it's quite a homogeneous product, even if we're looking here at, like, maybe we could use the example of Costa and Starbucks here, we do tend to switch between the two. There might be certain moralistic reasons you don't want to switch between the two, but you are going to get quite a lot of consumer switching. But also there's going to be some loyalty. If you're confused about that, then I think the game theory video that I did, I go through what that might mean. So let's start with the monopoly power first. It's a very kind of logical order that we'll do when we produce these diagrams. So the monopoly powers, the firm that's got the legal monopoly, potentially Costa in the example that I used before, is going to have quite low marginal cost, or lower marginal cost. Remember, they're still going to be advertising, which I know is a fixed cost, but they're still going to have some form of cost. It's not going to be like it's a theoretical monopoly, but it is going to be lower than the follower, the price follower in the market. So we're going to have a lower marginal cost. They're going to find the quantity at which they produce at, then we're going to go up and we're going to find the profit maximising price, and we know that because they're going to have lower average cost, then the average cost is going to be relatively low, not as low as we would have seen under a theoretical monopoly where they're not advertising, they're not engaging anything like that, but still relatively low. And we can see here that there's quite a lot of supernormal profit being made in the market. Now this price is very important. When we think about what I said before and how I explained it, we know that this price is going to become the kind of kink demand price, because the legal monopoly in the market has more kind of, they can set that price, they get to go first when they set their prices. So we're going to have our price and our quantity, and this is our kink demand curve. Now this might be, we know that the kink demand curve is for the firms, so it may well be that this could be for the follower or the monopoly. It doesn't really actually matter, the monopoly power, the firm with monopoly power doesn't actually really matter, because the kink demand price is still going to be the same. So remember, it's the same with all kink demand. It's elastic on top, because if you increase the price, you're going to have a more than proportional change in your quantity demanded, so you're going to lose revenue. And if you decrease the price, then you're going to have a less than proportional change in quantity demanded, which means you're going to have less revenue. So we can actually say, as we're drawing this diagram here, that this price here is equal to this price here, right? They're exactly the same. Now that's not necessarily true of this quantity. If this was the kink demand curve for the monopoly power, then this quantity here would be equal to this quantity here, but it may not be the same if this is for the follower, but the price is going to be the same because the monopoly have set that kink demand price. So the monopoly finds its profit maximising position and sets its price. Then that price becomes the kink demand position, right? Now we look at the follower in the market and the effect of this on the other firms in the market, on that follower in the market. So the follower in the market has a higher marginal cost, right? We know that because they don't get the same price and kind of economies of scale as the other monopoly power firm in the market. And we know that their average cost is also going to be higher, because they may not get those deals, or if their marginal cost is higher, their average cost is going to be higher, but also they may not get the same kind of vertical benefits that the firm with monopoly power gets. So if they were under normal market conditions, they would find their profit maximising price, they would find the profit maximising quantity, they would go up, and this is the price that they would set in the market. But we can see here that if they decided to set this price, which is their profit maximising price, they'd be making as much supernormal profit as they physically could, but their supernormal profit would actually be maximised. But that would mean that they're setting a price. We can see here that that price is higher than up here. So that would be a price that would be maybe here. Actually, I'll do it in black. That might be up here. And that means they're going to make less revenue than if they accept the price of the profit maximizer, price of the monopoly power. So we can see here that actually they have to accept this price, which is here, and this is why I've done them next to each other. So we can just take this price all the way across, and this is the price that they're going to charge. I'm going to put this as price N, so you can see that it's just all the way across. So at this price, they're going to make this much quantity, and they're going to make this much supernormal profit, right? So we can see that blue box is their supernormal profit. However, if they were able just under normal market conditions, we could see that actually their supernormal profit would be much larger. So for the firm that is a price follower, they are making less supernormal profit than they would have been making under kind of, if they had another way of coming to that oligopoly price. Maybe it's trial and error, maybe it's the other firms in the market. If you all have even market share, you can presume, say for instance the betting industry I think is a really good example, where they have you've got 6 firms with about 10 to 11% each. They may actually beat all of their profit maximising price, and therefore they're all able to profit maximise. And if it's where you've got like less price setting power, then actually all firms may be somewhere between their profit maximising, but they're still making more supernormal profit. But when you've got a legal monopoly, a strong legal monopoly compared to the other firms in the market, then actually the other firms in the market will inevitably make less supernormal profit, and the legal monopoly in the market may well be able to potentially make supernormal profit, their maximum amount of supernormal profit. So this is kind of like goes 1, 2, this is the effect of that price setting power on the other firms in the market. I hope that you found that interesting. I hope that you've learned a lot. You can use this, remember this is completely theoretical, like this is kind of your ceteris paribus, your analysis potential. Like this is not necessarily what happens, and you can think in your own brain of some evaluation points, kind of in reality, however this may not happen because X, Y and Z. So I hope that that's been useful for you, and I look forward to seeing you next time when we're going to be looking at natural monopolies. So enjoy, bye!